Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be taking a look at Great Boss, Dead Boss. It's a book that takes a look at leadership, and it looks at it in kind of a fascinating way, through the lens of ancient tribal dynamics. And we are going to find out how these insights, as old as they are surprisingly relevant for businesses operating in today's digital world.
It's really remarkable the way this book, through the story of Greg, who's trying to turn around this struggling tech company. Yeah, the book reveals that even in our hyper-connected world, we're still, in a lot of ways, driven by those deep-seated, tribal instincts.
The book really emphasizes this idea of companies as modern-day tribes. Could you break down what that means and why it matters so much in the digital age?
Absolutely. So it means understanding that companies, beyond just, organizational charts and fancy titles, right? They're fundamentally just groups of people with their own unique cultures and values, rituals even. Just like the ancient tribes, they have their own internal conflicts and alliances. And this tribal lens is even more important today because with, all these remote teams and flexible structures and the global collaboration that we have, building a strong internal culture around shared values is just absolutely crucial.
That makes sense. Without that feeling of shared identity and purpose, it's really easy for teams to become disconnected, especially, when they're physically separated.
Precisely. And the book digs deeper into this by introducing this framework of 5 dimensions that drive motivation.
Right.
Individual security, individual value, tribal security, tribal value. And then a 5th one, the just cause.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Individual security and individual value, those sound kind of straightforward, but how do they play out in a tribal context?
Yeah, so individual security. It's all about an individual's, need to feel safe and stable within the tribe. Think about things like job security, fair treatment, a predictable work environment. In the book, Greg, he notices how fear and uncertainty, they're just eroding this sense of security at MicroLogic, and it's leading to decreased productivity and innovation.
So it's not just about feeling safe physically, it's about psychological safety too, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're not going to get thrown under the bus for taking a risk or making a mistake.
Exactly. And then you have individual value, which is the need to feel valued, right? Mm-hmm. Appreciated for your contributions to the tribe. Things like recognition, respect, and a sense of accomplishment. In the book, Greg realizes that a lot of his employees feel like cogs in a machine. They're not really valued for their unique skills and talents.
That's really interesting to think about in the context of all this remote work. It's so easy to feel like just a name on a screen these days. So how do leaders make sure that those needs for security and value are met in a digital environment where those face-to-face interactions are so limited?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that the book actually addresses through the different strategies that Greg implements. For example, he starts off by making a conscious effort to acknowledge and to celebrate, individual achievements, even, small ones, really, in team meetings and company-wide communications. He also goes so far as to implement a peer-to-peer recognition program where employees can publicly acknowledge each other's contributions.
It seems like even small gestures, then, can go a long way in reinforcing that sense of individual value, especially when those gestures are made visible to the whole tribe.
Absolutely. And the book really stresses that transparency and clear communication are just even more crucial in a remote setting to make sure that everyone feels informed and connected to the tribe's activities. And Greg realizes that to combat the fear and uncertainty at MicroLogic, he needs to be more open with his employees about the company's challenges and the steps that they're taking to address them.
So it's all about kind of translating those traditional markers of security and value, like face-to-face praise, or, a pat on the back, into this new digital realm.
Exactly. And recognizing that, even though the medium of communication might change, the underlying human needs, those remain constant.
Now, what about the tribal versions of these needs? You talked about tribal security and tribal value. What do those look like in a business sense?
Right. So tribal security, it's that collective sense of safety and stability within the company as a whole. It's that feeling that the tribe itself is strong, resilient, capable of overcoming challenges. Think about a company's financial stability, its market position, its ability to adapt.
So it's not just about my own job security, it's about the whole organization.
Exactly, and this is where the common enemy strategy comes into play. By uniting a tribe against a shared competitor, or some challenge, right, you reinforce that sense of tribal security.
Like how Greg, in the book, rallies his team at MicroLogic by emphasizing the threat from their competitors, Advanced Circuits, Microdelta, and Enerdyne.
Exactly. It creates the shared purpose. And this sense of urgency, it reminds everyone, look, we're all in this together.
That makes me think about how companies are increasingly, collaborating in the digital space, forming partnerships and alliances. It's almost like tribal alliances where different tribes are joining forces for mutual benefit.
That's a great point. And the book does highlight that these alliances, while they can be beneficial, they also require a careful balancing act. You want to maintain your own tribe's unique identity and values, while also being open to learning and collaborating.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
between competition and cooperation, between maintaining those tribal boundaries and being open to new possibilities. Now, what about tribal value? How is that different from individual value?
So tribal value is the tribe's collective sense of worth, of accomplishment. It's about the company's reputation, its impact on the world, its contribution to something bigger than just itself.
So it's not just about what I achieve, it's about the whole legacy of the tribe.
Yes. And in the digital age, where news travels so fast and company reputations can be made or broken so quickly, tribal value is just more important than ever.
So how can leaders build a strong sense of tribal value then in a digital world where it's so easy to just get lost in the noise?
Well, the book provides a number of strategies that Greg implements at MicroLogic. One is building a really strong internal culture around shared values. This could involve developing, say, a company-wide code of ethics, creating opportunities for employees to actually share their personal values, or even just highlighting stories of employees who really embody the company's values.
It's about creating a shared narrative, a story that everyone can buy into and really contribute to.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating successes together, big and small, right? To reinforce that idea that we are achieving great things collectively.
This has been so insightful. We've covered individual security, individual value, tribal security, and tribal value, but you mentioned there was one more dimension.
Yeah.
The just cause. What is that? And how does it fit into this whole tribal framework?
The just cause is that overarching purpose, that higher calling, the thing that gives the tribe its reason for being. It's the answer to the question, why do we even exist as a tribe?
So it's about finding that something bigger than ourselves, that mission that really drives us.
Precisely. And this is where Greg, in the book, has his aha moment. He realizes that turning MicroLogic around isn't just about profits or beating the competition. It's about finding a purpose that his employees can connect with on a deeper level.
That must have been a pretty powerful realization for Greg.
It really was. And it's a great reminder to all leaders out there that, in today's world, purpose-driven companies, they attract the best talent. They build really loyal customers. So a compelling just cause is no longer just a nice thing to have. It's absolutely essential.
It's fascinating to think about how these, ancient tribal dynamics are still so relevant in this modern digital world. I guess it's true what they say. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
You got it. And the book does a phenomenal job of showing us how understanding those kind of primal instincts can help us build stronger, more resilient, and more purpose-driven organizations.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about how these concepts actually play out in real life. Okay, so we've talked about these 5 dimensions of motivation. They're crucial for building a strong tribe. But how does Greg actually start putting these ideas into action? At MicroLogic, it seems like such a huge task to shift an entire company culture, especially in such a fast-paced, digital world.
You're absolutely right. It's definitely not like flipping a switch. The book really shows us that it's a journey. Greg starts by just observing his team, and he starts noticing these patterns of behavior that are holding them back. He sees things like concealed wariness and, that forced enthusiasm you mentioned earlier. These are the kind of subtle signs that people are afraid to speak up or to take risks. That's when he realizes, wow, individual security and individual value, they've really taken a hit at MicroLogic.
So it's not enough to just implement a new policy or give some big motivational speech, right? It's more about understanding the underlying dynamics and addressing the root of the problem.
You got it. And the book actually offers this really helpful tool for diagnosing these team dynamics. It's called the quadrant system. Remember we talked about how each of those 5 dimensions can be either high or low? Well, the quadrant system maps out all the different combinations, so you can actually visualize where your team falls on that motivational map.
This quadrant system, it sounds like a really practical tool for leaders. Can you walk us through some examples of how those different combinations actually play out?
Absolutely. Let's take an example, like high individual security paired with low tribal security. This is where you might find, say, government agencies or large corporations that have been around forever, employees feel really secure in their jobs, but maybe the organization itself is kind of struggling to adapt to a changing market or facing some external threat.
So it's kind of like that saying, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. People feel safe, but there's not a lot of motivation to really innovate or take risks.
Exactly. Now let's contrast that with a situation where both individual security and tribal security are low. This is where you often find startups or companies that are in like crisis mode. Everyone's feeling the pressure and there's a real sense of urgency, but it can also lead to burnout and a lack of trust.
It sounds pretty stressful, actually. So it seems like finding that balance between security and a healthy level of challenge is really key.
It really is. And the book highlights how crucial it is for leaders to be aware of where their team falls on this quadrant system, and then, of course, to adjust their leadership style accordingly.
So a leader in that high individual security, low tribal security environment, they might need to focus on creating a sense of urgency.
Encourage innovation, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a leader in that low security environment might need to prioritize building trust, psychological safety.
Exactly. It's about adapting your approach to the specific needs of your tribe. Now we've spent a lot of time on the motivational aspects of building a tribe, but the book also really digs into the importance of understanding how tribes communicate. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, communication. It's key, right?
Yeah.
And the book actually outlines different communication styles that are especially relevant in the digital age. For example, you have ally tribe-to-tribe communication. This is becoming more and more common as companies form partnerships and, collaborate on different projects. It's all about building trust and establishing clear lines of communication between different tribes.
That makes me think about how important it is to have a shared understanding of goals and expectations when you're working with another company, right? Especially when a lot of those interactions are happening online.
Absolutely. Clear communication and a shared vision are essential for successful collaboration. Another communication style the book talks about is enemy individual to tribe. This could be, say, a whistleblower exposing some wrongdoing within a company, or an activist group that's challenging a corporation's practices.
That type of communication seems like it's even more powerful in the digital age, with social media, and just the ability for individuals to reach a huge audience so quickly.
That's a good point. And the book stresses that leaders really need to be prepared to engage in those kinds of conversations constructively and transparently, because trying to just, silence dissent or ignore criticism, it can really backfire online.
Right. It's about recognizing that even those enemy voices can actually provide valuable insights and opportunities to grow. Now, aside from these different communication styles, are there any other specific strategies that Greg uses at MicroLogic to improve communication within the tribe?
Yes, and this is where things get really interesting. Remember, we talked about the importance of a shared tribal vocabulary. Well, Greg starts to consciously incorporate this into the company culture at MicroLogic. He encourages the use of, three-letter acronyms, specific jargon that's meaningful to the team.
So it's not just about having, a common language. It's about creating a language that's unique to your tribe, that reinforces that sense of shared identity.
Exactly. It's like having your own secret code that only members of the tribe understand. And this becomes even more important in a digital environment where, communication can often feel impersonal.
It's like those inside jokes and shared references, the kind of things that bond friends together. And I imagine having this shared language, it can actually really streamline communication and help avoid misunderstandings, especially when you're working across different departments or time zones.
Absolutely. And this is something that can be easily implemented in the digital world through things like team-specific glossaries, online forums, or even just using, emojis and GIFs that have a special meaning within the tribe.
Yeah, it's about finding those little ways to inject personality and humor into our digital communications and just make it feel more human. Now, language aside, what other strategies does Greg use to foster that connection and shared identity within his tribe?
Well, one of the simplest but most effective strategies is celebrating successes together. In the book, Greg realizes that MicroLogic has been so focused on, putting out fires and meeting deadlines, they've actually forgotten to celebrate their wins. So he starts making an effort to acknowledge and celebrate achievements, both big and small.
We talked earlier about the importance of celebrating those successes to reinforce tribal value. But it seems like it plays a crucial role in just building those individual connections too, and fostering that sense of camaraderie.
You're absolutely right. And in the digital age, there are just so many creative ways to do this. You can have virtual high fives, in team chats, online recognition ceremonies, or even just sending like a celebratory GIF to a colleague who's done a great job.
It's about adapting those traditional tribal rituals of celebration and recognition to the digital world.
Precisely. And it's about remembering that even in a digital environment, those little gestures of appreciation and acknowledgement can go a long way in building a strong and cohesive tribe.
So we've talked about communication styles, a shared language, celebrating successes. Are there any other key takeaways from the book that you would give to our listeners who are leading teams in this ever-changing, digital world?
Yes, there is one more. And it might be the most important of all. It's the importance of cultivating loyalty.
Loyalty. We touched on this briefly earlier, but it seems like such a complex concept, especially these days when people are changing jobs so often. Company loyalty, it seems like it often takes a backseat to individual career goals.
You're absolutely right. It is complex. And the book really explores this through Greg's conversations with Butch. Butch is a seasoned entrepreneur, and he's seen firsthand how loyalty, or the lack of it, can really make or break a company.
It's interesting that you mentioned Butch because, he's not just some theoretical expert. He's a real-world leader who built a successful company based on these very tribal principles.
Exactly. And Butch really emphasizes that loyalty. It's not just about, blind obedience or staying with a company for your whole life. It's more about a shared commitment to the tribe's values and goals, and a willingness to go the extra mile for each other.
Right. It's about that sense of mutual respect and trust that we talked about earlier, and recognizing that, everyone's contributing to something bigger.
You got it. And the book highlights that cultivating loyalty, it starts with being a leader who's worthy of loyalty. It's about demonstrating integrity, fairness, a genuine concern for the well-being of your tribe.
It's about walking the walk, right? Not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And it's about creating a culture where loyalty is valued and rewarded, where people feel like they belong, like they have a shared purpose. Greg actually learns this lesson the hard way at MicroLogic when he realizes that his own actions, have contributed to a culture of fear and distrust.
So it's about, as a leader, being really mindful of the signals you're sending, making sure that your actions align with the values that you're promoting.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that loyalty is a two-way street. You can't expect loyalty from your tribe if you're not willing to be loyal to them in return. The book actually uses the whole Enron scandal as a cautionary tale, showing how a breach of trust at the top can lead to a complete breakdown of loyalty and eventually, the collapse of the entire tribe.
It's a powerful reminder that trust and loyalty are really the foundation of any successful tribe, and that those foundations need to be nurtured and protected very carefully.
And in the digital age, where information travels so fast and reputations can be damaged in a second, cultivating loyalty is more important than ever.
So much to think about. Great Boss, Dead Boss has really given us a whole new way of thinking about leadership in the digital age. It's amazing how Great Boss, Dead Boss connects these, ancient tribal ideas to the challenges of running a business today, especially, like you said, in the digital age. It seems almost counterintuitive. But as we've been talking about, a lot of those old instincts, they still apply.
It really shows that no matter, how technologically advanced we get, we're still human. And those human needs for connection, for belonging, for purpose, they go way back, to our tribal past.
The book talks about this interesting idea of a walled city as a way to think about the boundaries of a tribe. Can you tell me more about that and how it applies to companies in this interconnected, digital world that we're in?
Yeah, so the walled city, it represents both the physical and the mental boundaries that protect a tribe, their identity, their resources. Think about things like the office building, the company's network, even the shared language and rituals that we talked about earlier, right? These all create that sense of separation from the outside world.
It's interesting to think about those boundaries now that so many people are working remotely, and those lines between our personal and professional lives are getting blurrier and blurrier.
Exactly. And the book really stresses that leaders need to find a balance. On the one hand, you need those boundaries to create a sense of unity and identity within the tribe. But you also need to be open to new ideas, new partnerships, new ways of working, especially in the digital world where collaboration is so important.
So it's about having those walls, but with windows and doors.
Right.
Protecting your core values, but also being open to what's happening out there.
That's a great way to put it. You know, Greg, in the book, he learns this at MicroLogic. He realizes that their culture has become so insular that it's actually made them resistant to change and blind to new opportunities.
I can see how that would be an easy trap to fall into, especially for companies that have been successful. You know, they retreat into their walled city and get comfortable and then lose sight of what's happening in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important for leaders to build a culture of continuous learning and adaptation, even when things are going well, right? Encourage your team to explore new ideas, to experiment with new technologies, and to connect with other tribes.
So it's not just about building a strong tribe. It's about building a tribe that can adapt, that's resilient in the face of change.
Exactly. And that adaptability is more important than ever in the digital age because the pace of change is just, it's incredible.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Great Boss, Dead Boss, I have to ask, what's the one piece of advice from the book that you would give to our listeners who are, you know, out there leading teams in this digital landscape that's always changing?
I would say, embrace the power of your tribe. Understand those basic human needs for connection, belonging, purpose. Create a culture where there's trust, loyalty, shared values. Lead with integrity and with purpose. And remember, even in the digital world, it's the leaders who understand the importance of human connection. They're the ones who succeed.
Really wise words. Great Boss, Dead Boss has given us a powerful new way to think about leadership. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights that you can use on your own leadership journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.